All right, welcome. Thanks for coming. It's great to see you. This webinar is being brought to you by MCSC Women's Business Center. We're a nonprofit business center serving entrepreneurs in SLO, Kern, and Monterey counties. We offer no-cost one-on-one business consulting with professionals in finance, marketing, e-commerce, management, HR, you name it. If it's a need that a business would have, we can help you. We have a team of consultants ready to assist you with whatever you need. All you need to do is simply register at mcscorp.org to get started, and there's no cost. Our contact information is on the screen, and I will put it in the chat box in a little bit. I would like to thank Gina Cinardo for presenting today. Gina is a Women's Business Center success story. After completing our entrepreneurial training course, she launched her business and is a testament to the power of women entrepreneurs. She's the owner of Ginici Studios, a photography studio that specializes in headshots, personal branding, and commercial photography. Her passion is to tell a story through designs and images that effectively convey your business's message to your customers. She also helps businesses set up starter websites and WordPress and develop a social media presence. You're in for a treat today. This is a two-part series, so today is part 1 and next Wednesday is part 2. If you haven't registered for that, you will want to. You can do that at mcscorp.org. So we have a few basic housekeeping items. Please limit your distractions and mute your phone. This class is webinar style, so your webcams are off and your microphone is muted. So if you'd like to participate, please put your questions in the chat box. You can put them in whenever you think about it, and we will get to them when it's appropriate. A link will be provided to you once the recording is processed following today's class. So we have a quick poll. We'd like to find out how you heard about this so we can continue to reach you. So I'm going to go ahead and launch that poll. It is 30 seconds. All right, so without further ado, I hand you over to Gina.
Well, hello, everybody. It's so nice to be here today and to share with you all kinds of good information about how to take better pictures with your smartphone. Now, I am going to share my screen here, and I have a lot of windows open on my desktop, so you know, Barbara, you do such an awesome job. I can't tell you what a pro she is at this now. She's just getting this all together, especially since we had technical difficulties this morning and I was a little frazzled because I initially planned on actually having my pro camera as my webcam today. And well, that did not work. So this is my computer.
You are a pro, Gina, and you are among pros as well in the audience. We're all pros here today.
Technical stuff happens all the time. You just sort of have to wing it and do the best you can. So I also have my smartphone, because what I'll be doing is I'll be picking up my smartphone and showing you a perspective of items that I want to photograph. And as well as, my environment to kind of give you an idea about lighting. So anyway, so that's why I've labeled my Gina's smartphone. So when I'm talking about my smartphone, I'm not using the audio on that. So, Barbara, if you can, I might ask you to pin the smartphone. Do you know how to do that?
I'll figure it out.
Okay, if you can figure it out, great. If not, then I'll just tell everybody to look at the smartphone.
Okay.
Anyway. But if you pin it, it will come up live. So I'm going to be sharing my presentation back and forth because I wanted to go live. And so I'll just have to move my computer to kind of give you an idea what I'm doing. Okay, so let's see. So can everybody see my presentation? Can you see my presentation? Oh, no, I'm not.
I got a white screen.
Okay, that's interesting. Let's try that again. That's because I picked the whiteboard.
There we go.
Okay, so
I
am not going to do, thank you. So I'm not going to do full frame view because I'm going to be going back and forth on a lot of these slides. And when you're in Zoom and you do play on whether you're using Keynote or PowerPoint, it goes full screen and I have no control of my mouse. So I'm going to actually do it this way. So hopefully everybody can see. I might, do I need to zoom out a little bit? Maybe I need to go 75%. Is that better? Or is the other way better? What do you think?
I think the first way was better.
Okay, so let's go this way.
Bigger.
Okay, so improving smartphone photography. So today we're going to be, I'm going to be sharing with you how to take better pictures with your smartphone so that you can captivate your audience better. Because if you're taking pictures and sharing them on social media or putting them on your website and they're blurry and they're not the best resolution, or they're not lit well and they're fuzzy, people are not going to take you as seriously. You want to be taken seriously as business owners, whether you're selling a product, whether you're selling yourself, or whatever it is, whatever services you're selling. So I'm going to give you lots of great information on how to really improve your photography on your phone so that you can kind of take your business a little bit to the next level. It's going to be easier. Now, obviously, using a smartphone is never going to be as great as a pro camera because the optics are not going to be the same, obviously, and the resolution is not going to be the same, but you can still do a really great job. And I'm going to tell you right now, I'm not going to teach anybody your smartphone app tools and stuff like that, because everybody on this call has a totally different phone. Everybody has different phones and different versions of the phone. And so different versions of the phone may be different versions of the app software as well, the camera app software. So I'm not going to be able to tell anybody any specifics about their phone. I have an iPhone 7, so I'm actually using an old iPhone. But for the most part, I'm going to give you the gist of what you need to look for and a formula that you can follow that's going to make it a lot easier for you to just dive right in. Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about lighting basics and some tips and tricks with the phone that I can give you some advice about, as well as maybe investing in some inexpensive home studio equipment. And then actually we'll end with some composition, and I have a lot to talk about on composition because I really feel like it's very important to talk about composition because it's where your eye is drawn into the picture on the primary subject that you're photographing, whether it's a person, whether it's a product, or whether it's a story you're telling. You want people to see and hone in on the actual subject that you're photographing, okay? So we're gonna talk a little bit about that at the end, but if I don't make it for the full time, we can actually move the rest of the composition onto part 2. So part 2, we're gonna be talking more about how to photograph yourself. Today, we're gonna be talking more about how to photograph more like product photography or storytelling photography, items and stuff like that, okay? So let's dive in. We're going to start by talking, oh, and here's me. And yes, there's that picture again. And the reason why I use this picture as my opening picture is because I took this photograph with my cell phone. Yes, I did. Aren't you guys amazed? Now, don't be that impressed because I'm really good at Photoshop because this was the original. And so because this was the original, there were some flaws. And so I had to fix it a little bit. And of course, you know, I had a hat on, so I was trying to brighten up my face. And this is one of my favorite things as a photographer ever, is to go back and forth and see my before and afters. Don't you love that? Isn't that the coolest thing ever? I just love that. But I'm also a techie, you know, photo editing and retouching Photoshop nerd. So I am that also. So anyway, we're going to dive right in. Oh, a little bit about me too. So I am a professional photographer. I actually got my degree in fine art photography, and I have about 30 years of experience being a photographer. And so, but I really embraced the digital age. So I was all film when I first learned. And when digital photography started to come into play, I was having all my film shoots actually scanned right from the beginning so that I could manipulate them and actually make them, improve them on Photoshop. So anyway, that's really my background, but it's my passion. I love photographing people and I love telling stories. That is one of the things that I love to do. So we'll talk a little bit more about that at the very end. Okay, so let's dive right into lighting, okay? Lighting, there's all kinds of different lighting, but there are, but the two primary lighting that we're going to be discussing is really going to be sunlight and artificial light, because that's what's around us all the time, you know. So obviously with sunlight, you're going to have a direct sunlight. So direct sunlight is when you're out in the sun and the sun is directly on your face. And so that is direct sunlight. And then you have indirect sunlight. And indirect sunlight is when you're in the shade. And so if you have, like, I just used an umbrella as an example, but you could be in the shade, you could be by a building, you could be under trees, or you can be inside your house and with next to an open window. Now also clouds will block the sun and shade it, but it also depends on how dense the clouds are and how dispersed they are. If it's a very, very cloudy day, we all know how that is, and it's considered kind of diffuse light, but it's slightly different. Diffuse light is when you have sun directly coming into a source or coming into an area, and then you're diffusing it with something such as a curtain, or I'll talk about a scrim later, or a sheet. You could use a sheet. Or it could also be fog. Fog is really nice diffuse light because it's not as dense as, say, clouds might be, but it also depends on what's around. Sometimes we have a layer of fog in our area because we live by the ocean, and then we also have clouds way up in the sky, which could block it even more and make it even darker. But if it's soft diffuse light, usually around here, we know that by noon it kind of diffuses. The sun burns out all of the little droplets of water, and suddenly we have sunshine again. But in the morning, if it's just droplets of water, it's really nice diffuse light. And I'll explain that a little bit more as well as we go along. So different kinds of lighting for artificial is incandescent lighting. I'm just going to talk about these three primary things: incandescent lighting, fluorescent lighting, and studio lighting. And when I'm going to say studio lighting, that could mean strobe lighting. We're not going to be talking about strobes because obviously you can you can only set up a strobe with a professional camera, and you have to, you know, activate it or sync it to your camera, and we're not going to do that with a phone. So we're going to be talking about what's called continuous lighting. I'll go into that a little bit more detail later as well. So continuous lighting is going to be a light source that's always on, and then as you photograph, you can move them around. It's really handy. But let me talk a little bit about these other two kinds of lights. Okay, an incandescent light is basically your typical light bulb, and that is going to be in your lamps at night. A fluorescent light, we buy lots more fluorescents these days too, when we can actually put them in a lamp as well, but they have a little different color temperature, and I'm going to talk about that in just a second. Most of the time, fluorescent lights, especially the big tube lights, are going to be in corporate settings, and they tend to have a weird color, and so we're going to talk about temperature. So temperature is the sun. The sun we're going to talk first. The sun's temperature is anywhere between 5,000 to 6,500 Kelvin, and that's how they measure temperature as far as lighting, is in kelvins, okay? And this is important to know because nowadays what you can do is you can go to Home Depot and you can buy pretty much any temperature of light you want, okay? Now, as human beings, we actually love the sunlight, but when the sun goes down, we don't want to be going to sleep in the sun. It's very hard to go to sleep in the sun. So, you know, back in the day when they didn't have light bulbs, they actually used, you know, light as far fire and candles and lamps and stuff like that. So it's a very warm light. So an incandescent light is going to be pretty much anywhere from 2,700 Kelvin to 300 Kelvin. It's going to be very warm and very yellow, okay? A fluorescent light is going to be a little bit more, well, it depends. Again, like I said, you can go to Home Depot and buy pretty much any color temperature of light these days. You just have to look at the kelvins and see what temperature it is. But it's going to be a little bit greener yellow, and it's going to be anywhere from about 3,500 to 3,000 to 3,500. Okay, and then your studio light is meant to emulate your sunlight, which is going to be anywhere from 5,600 and all the way up to 6,500, but around 5,600 is where it tends to range depending on the type of lights you purchase or you get. Okay, so think about it this way. The higher the number, the bluer the light. The lower the number, the yellower the light, okay? So if studio light is meant to emulate the sun, then that's a clue that the bluer the light when you're photographing tends to be a little bit better. The reason why I'm telling you this is because as we photograph things, we're going to have to search for best light scenarios, okay? And if we don't have enough light, what we tend to do is try to fill it in with more light. And if you grab a lamp that has a 3,500 Kelvin incandescent light in it, and you put it next to a window and try to photograph something, you're going to get this weird split. You might get really weird color tones on it. And that is what happened here, okay? I was in my garage. I had my lights on, my I don't even know if they were my strobes or actually, I don't know whichever, but I had continuous lights on, and then I also forgot and I left my garage lights on. So I had I had one light bulb over me, and then I also had a fluorescent over in the corner on. So I was really, really yellow. So that's why I had to color correct it and make it more blue to balance that color and make my skin tone look a little bit more natural. Okay, so that's kind of why I wanted to show you that. But color temperature is important to note because you don't want to mix the lights. You don't want to mix the two lights. If you and with a cell phone, it's very important to understand too that you can't control the temperature of light when you're taking the picture. Now, of course, once you take a picture, if you take something that's under a lamp and it's really, really, really yellow, then, well, of course, later on you could add like a blue filter over it, which might balance the color a little bit, but you kind of want to get it right in the beginning. So this is what I'm going to suggest. And I see a lot of comments. Are there any questions so far? Oh, let's see. I just have to minimize my chat.
We do have some chit chat going back and forth, but the only real question was somebody wants to take pictures of their dog, so things that are moving. Joe does. So are you going to be talking about that today?
I am going to be talking mostly about photographing still life, but I'll give her some tips later on. I'll talk about moving things. Actually, it was John. Okay. Okay. Oh, John, sorry. I will talk a little bit about that later. It's very hard to do moving things with a cell phone. That's one unfortunate thing. So I may have more tips for him the next time because people tend to move more than products and stuff like that. So anyway, okay. Moving along, what I'm going to talk about next then is the lighting direction. So directional lighting in this case. So obviously the first is front light. And so if you are taking a photograph of a vase, let's say, and the sun is behind you and you're using your cell phone to take the picture of the vase, then that's considered front lighting because the light is on the front of the subject and that's the direction you're shooting it. Now keep in mind that a lot of times, depending on the height of the sun could be over your head or it could be directly behind you. And if it's directly behind you, what's going to happen? Well, you're going to create a shadow. So be careful as to where the light is in your position to how you're going to be photographing, and I'm going to go into that a little bit later as well. The second would be side lighting. And so if you're shooting you're shooting a vase again with your cell phone and the sun is to the side of it, then obviously the shadow is going to go to the right and you're going to have more shadow on the subject yourself. Now I'm kind of showing a really hard light here because I'm showing the sun as the light source. But let's say this light source is a strobe light, or not a strobe light, it's a continuous light. Okay, so it's a light box like this one right behind me. Okay, so let's say it's that. It's going to be a little softer, and I'll explain to you why these things work so well in a little bit. And so that shadow might not be so defined, it will be softer. And so on a side light, the light may fall over, and this is just a graphic, so it's not totally realistic, but it might fall over and that shadow will be a little bit softer, okay? And then of course, if the sun is behind the subject and you're photographing in towards the sun or the light source in this case, then your object, your subject is going to be backlit. That's what they call that. So this is front lighting, side lighting, and backlit. Now, a lot of us have experienced this because what happens sometimes when we take our cell phones to the beach during a beautiful sunset, and we want to take a picture and then we take it with our friends and you've got a great sunset and all you are just black. You and your friends are just black. Now, I know some of the newer apps on your phones may be able to adjust for that because they are designing the software to adapt to how people photograph, and so it might be a little bit better these days. Most of the time, a pro photographer is also not going to be able to do that unless they actually use a light source in front of this to make it brighter or brighter than the light source behind it to actually light it and illuminate it. Okay, but I will also go into that a little bit more later. Okay, let's see. I'm going to just quickly look at my notes, see if I haven't forgotten anything. Okay. Okay, so the best quality of light, and this is kind of well, this is not my opinion. This is actually the opinion of many people. So the best quality of light is going to be indirect or diffuse light from the sun. And it's going to be from one or multiple directions. Okay. So the sunlight is probably the best quality of light, which is why all of these strobe and studio lights that have been created for photographing better is basically the same temperature as the light. So that's the other great thing about maybe getting in some investment and investing in some lights in the future is they're the same color balance as the sun, so you can use it with the sun. Okay, so that's really kind of a nice tool. But if you don't have the budget right now, you can create a really nice little setup in studio simply using natural light, totally natural light. Okay, so if indirect or diffuse light is the best, then where are you going to find that? Inside your house or in the condition, or you're in your current setting right now, and that's going to be finding the best window probably in the house. Now you have windows all around your house. The sun is going to be in a different direction, different times of the day. You're going to find maybe one room is going to be brighter in the morning, and then one room is going to be really dark by noon, but it's, so every room, so you're gonna have to find the best light, the best time, and you don't want it to be direct sunlight. So if you have direct sunlight coming through a window, that's when you wanna diffuse it. Okay, that's when you wanna put something over the window, such as a curtain or a sheet, a white sheet, to diffuse the light so that it's not harsh, hard light on the subject that you're photographing. Okay. So if it's indirect light, that's exactly the situation that I am in. So I'm going to move my little cell phone here real quick, a smartphone, and I'm going to skim around and show you my environment. And I have to use my whole computer to skim around. So I have in my house, if you can see me, in fact, maybe what I'll do is just stop sharing real quick. And now you can see a big version of me. So if you can see me, I have a tiny little light there. I have two skylights. I have a little window in my kitchen. And then I have a side light right here. I have a door that's open right there, or a sliding glass door. So I live in a nice light box. I live in a perfect little light box. And that's kind of ideal that a photographer moved into a little light box. I have I actually have one lamp on right now, and that's what's illuminating me. And that's on my desk. And because I do a lot of Zoom calls and I have a lot of natural sunlight in here, I purchased a fluorescent light that is daylight balanced. It's probably about 5,000 or 5,600 Kelvin in this lamp. So that actually balances me out and doesn't make me look really, really yellow. Okay. So that is ideal situation. This is a great situation. I don't have any indirect sunlight coming on the afternoon. I do tend to have a little bit come in from my skylights on on my kitchen table in my living room, but for the most part, it's all very soft and diffused. And I also have shades over those skylights too, which also diffuse it even more. So if you have shades, great shades are great. Like these kinds of, not wood shades, but the filtery ones, the white soft ones that kind of, you know what, I don't even know how to, like accordion, those are great. Okay, so that's my situation right here. So I'll get back and I'll share my presentation again. Okay, so when we're talking about the best quality of light, it's easy to find it in your home, and it's, guess what, it's free. It's totally free. You don't have to buy a thing, okay? So the foolproof formula to photographing anything in your house, whether it's your product, whether it's a story, whether it's a person, is to find the best quality of light. So find the best quality of light in your current surrounding and diffuse it if necessary, okay? If it's indirect, you don't have to diffuse it. So, and then you're gonna position the subject with the light directly in front or to the side. Now here's the challenge. If you have a room with one big sliding glass door and it's beautiful indirect light, and you want to photograph an object in front of it, and you stand in front of the window, and then you're going to create a shadow over the subject. So you're probably going to want to use a side light. So you want to photograph it on the side, and then you can fill in light on the other side if you need it. And I'm going to show you how to do that in just a bit. Okay, so if you fill in the light, it doesn't even have to be a light source. It could be a reflector, and a reflector can be anything that's white, basically, or silver, but silver sometimes can be a little bit harsh. I tend to like a soft white light will bounce the light a little bit softer and also diffuse it back as so you have sun coming in from the window and then bouncing off a white card or something like that. Okay, so before we begin and I show you exactly what it is that I'm talking about in regards to photographing, I'm going to talk a little bit about what you're going to photograph. Now, I know somebody mentioned that they want to photograph his dog. He wants to photograph his dog. Dogs are great, but we're kind of on the topic of more how to photograph for marketing. And of course, if dogs are part of your business, well, then you really want to get good at it. But I do have some tips for you a little bit later. But one is to really know what the project is at hand that we're going to be dealing with. So what is your overall goal? Most of the time, the overall goal is going to be outreach, correct? Or it's going to be to sell a product, to sell a service, to sell yourself, okay? So if that's the overall goal, then you have to think about how your client's going to think about it. Like who your ideal client is going to be, who you're speaking to in these images. Okay, so these images needs to be totally relatable to your customers. Okay, so obviously then you need to understand, or you need to figure out what it is you're going to be photographing. If it's a product, that's really simple. Okay, if it's a product, or if it's a dog in this case, if you're doing that, if it's a story that you're telling, like maybe you want to map out something and tell a story about one of your own rituals, say like your morning journaling or something like that. And then figure out what your purpose is. Like, what is the purpose of doing this? Obviously, kind of goes into the little bit about goals, but is it going to be to put it on your website? Is it going to be to share it in all areas, such as social media? Is it going to go on a brochure and all that kind of stuff? So what is the purpose? And then how many perspectives you need? Because I think what happens a lot is we get into this situation where we photograph, let's say we photograph a piece of jewelry that we've made and we want to put it on our website, but we've then totally forgotten how to, or we've forgotten to photograph it for some social media. You know, you're going to photograph it for social media, maybe slightly different. Maybe this is where you need to think about other perspectives of how you can showcase whatever subject it is that you're actually trying to photograph and capture. Okay, so if it's a piece of jewelry, you're going to need obviously a really good close-up of that piece of jewelry to put on your website in your e-commerce so that you can sell it. You can show the client what it looks like, okay? But then maybe you want to actually show it on somebody's neck, or maybe you want to show it in your hand, or maybe you want to also show it with a pairing, like maybe with this an earring set or a scarf or other jewelry and textures to sort of showcase it, like maybe a ring that could show a selection. And then you can actually share it in multiple ways. So you can share it on your social media, and you can share it on your website, and then you can also put it in maybe a little brochure. Okay, so that's what I'm talking about. How many perspectives you want to take, where will you be, knowing where you'll be sharing them and how many you will do is going to make it easier, because once you get something set up and you're taking a picture of something, it's kind of a pain to have to do it again if you forgot. If you forgot basically, you know, what it is you're going to be, where is you're going to be sharing it and so forth. Okay, somebody just said, what about paintings? Well, paintings is going to be something that you could certainly create a different scene. I mean, you're going to photograph it so that it's showcasing the painting as flat as you can. And I'm going to talk a little bit about perspective in just a moment. But you're going to want to light your painting as evenly as possible. Photograph it with your phone as flat as you can. So if you have your painting on the wall, you're going to want your camera to be completely perpendicular to that painting. You're not going to want it like this. And then you might want to pull it back and put a vase and put it in a surrounding, in a situation. If you want to tell that story, that's totally up to you. Okay. Now, if you tell that story, you're setting an environment, you're creating, I mean, a lot of times with artwork in general, if you're trying to share your artwork, telling the story of the artwork is a great way to sell the artwork, even if it's fine art photography and such, because people are more drawn into your purpose. And I'm going to go into a little bit about branding and how we brand ourselves as artists, as business people in part 2, because I'm going to be talking a little bit more about how to photograph yourself. But anyway, so you can kind of think of that a way. You can do this is what my painting looks like, and then this is how it could look in your home, kind of a perspective or storytelling. So that's kind of what I was talking about. Okay, moving on. Before I show you a little bit about photographing too, I'm going to talk a little bit about the cell phone itself. Okay, I'm going to do a little fun. I'm going to grab my cell phone and flip it. Okay, let's see if I can show you. Okay, so this is considered the front-facing camera, which is the camera that we see when we're taking a picture of ourselves. Okay, and when I use Zoom is always going to use that front-facing camera so that we can see the screen as well. Okay, so now the back-facing camera is the one that's on the other side of the camera. And so when we're taking a picture of something, we'll see it illuminated on this side, right? So one thing to note is that the back-facing camera is going to have much better optics and also resolution as the front-facing camera, okay? So if you really want to take better pictures of yourself, I mean, I'm going to go into this in part 2, you really kind of want to use this side of the camera, which makes it a lot harder to take pictures of ourselves because we can't see ourselves. But that's a whole thing that I'm going to go into part 2. But that's just something I want you to keep in note, because you have many more features on the back-facing camera than you do on the front-facing camera. And what I mean by features is the application that you're using for your smartphone is going to have a panoramic feature, obviously, a video, obviously. It's also going to have maybe a square. You can photograph in a square. Some of them have time lapse, but some of them have like portrait mode. And then some of them have like food photography. Some of them might have micro photography. And so there's all these different features that you have in your camera that you won't have on the front facing camera. Now, I don't know, some newer cameras might have more features on the front facing camera, but most of the time The features are on the back facing camera because they're better optics and they do more stuff. And so they have, and also you have a flash on this side, on the front facing camera side. So you could use the flash, but in most cases, I don't like using the camera flash on the phone, but it depends on the situation. A lot of times it's set to go off, or it's set on automatic. So if you really get into a low light situation and you're taking pictures of your friends, the flash might go off. But a lot of times you actually have to turn the flash on manually and to test it out. So if you're in a situation and you don't try it, you could just try that flash and see if that works. But what happens with that flash is it's really harsh and it will create really deep shadows, okay? But I'm not going to show you any examples of using the flash. I'd rather you use softer light with the existing light that you have in your surroundings. So that means if you're going to be photographing your subject or your product or whatever it is, do it in the daytime. Don't do it at night, obviously, because then you're going to have to use whatever light you have in the room that you have. So if it's incandescence and fluorescence and mixed, it's going to be kind of weird looking. It's not going to be great quality. Okay. So I am going to stop sharing and I'm going to turn my computer to show this. Let's see. Okay. And I'm going to grab my camera phone. Now, Barbara, well, actually, don't worry about it. Okay. Hi. It's a good thing I have a headset on. Okay, so the reason why I brought the camera over here, oh, wait a minute, I'm looking at me, is because I want you to be able to see what I'm working with. But of course, I'm using the front-facing camera in this case, which is not the greatest, and it's also on Zoom, and I'm also streaming it. So there's gonna be a little bit of a lag, but I kind of want you to see the light, and it's not balancing the light that great right now. As you can see, my hand is like super white. But let's just stop. Let's just worry and think about direction. Now that I'm not using my actual camera, I can move this a little closer. Okay. So the first thing I want to talk about is, again, my light source. Okay. And you can see that I'm really dark right now because why? Because I'm backlit. Okay. So I have the two lights above my head. I have the light in the window, and I have my my sliding glass door right here. So I have all this light coming in from the side. So whatever I'm photographing right here, it's going to be illuminated. You can actually see it better in the webcam than you can on my phone, is that the light is definitely illuminating this side. I have to go backwards, this side more than this side. Okay. So I'm going to take a subject. Let's photograph a piece of jewelry. Okay. I'm going to do this real quick. I have a little stand here. I don't know if it's going to show anything. Yeah, whatever. So I actually have some velvet. If you're photographing jewelry, you can use anything as a backdrop, really, but it just depends on what your jewelry is. If it's something bold and solid, like a big chunk of silver, then something with some texture and color and dimension might be okay. But for the most part, we want to see the detail. So I just picked a piece of black velvet. Black velvet is great. Okay. And so, of course I have, and you can go to the fabric store and buy little swatches. If you're doing something, photographing something small, buy little swatches and you can use those as backgrounds, or you can go to Michael's. They have great colored papers and textures, but just keep in mind, if you're doing something with a lot of texture, whatever it is you're photographing, you don't want to compete with that. You want people to see what it is you're photographing, so you want it to stand out. So if it's got a lot of texture, that texture needs to tell the right story, or pattern rather. But texture can also add some depth to it as well. And you don't have to photograph your products, on a solid background. You could also do, You could do a piece of wood, okay? You could do a piece of wood, you could do a piece of metal. You just have to experiment with it and see what complements the jewelry the most. Okay, so now I'm gonna grab my phone to kind of give you an idea. So I'm gonna photograph side lighting because the majority of my light's coming from above me, so I have nice filtered light behind me and I have this filtered light coming in from the side. So as you look at the jewelry, you see that there's more light coming in on this side, okay? And so if I were to take a picture here, let's say I take a picture, click. I can't actually take a picture because I'm streaming. Then what you can do to fill in the other side is just use a piece of white board, okay? So you can use a little reflector. So I don't know if you're gonna be able to tell the difference. Let me see. Well, you can't really do it with a zoom. Okay, so if you were to add a reflector, and this is gonna bounce more light back, and you can kind of see when you're looking at the smartphone. And then like I said, if you can pin that cell phone, the smartphone, because I'm talking so much that my webcam is coming on. So Barbara, if you could figure out how to pin the smartphone, then people can see it better.
I did.
So as I put that white card up, you can see how much light comes in just from that white card, okay? So now to get it to stand up, oh, I think you pinned yourself. Oh, there. Anyway, it's not that important. I think you guys can see. The only thing is on the recorded version, Barbara, I don't know if this will actually show in the recorded version. So that's why pinning it would be nice.
Okay.
Now what you can, wait, okay. So what you can do also is you can actually get two pieces of these and you can tape them together and create what's called a V-flat. That way you don't have to hold it. You can actually create a little V and create a little white box right around the object, and it's going to illuminate it from both sides. So if you have enough light, I would normally, if I were to actually do this, I would be probably about 3 feet closer to the window because I don't have any direct light coming in. It would be a little bit brighter, give me a little bit more control. And then I would put one piece here. Let me kind of show you there. And one piece here with the reflector, okay? Now, when you use the reflector, it illuminates it from all areas. So this is also a personal thing, and it also depends on what it is you're photographing, right? If you're photographing a piece of all silver jewelry, it might be too much light. But if it's on black, it's going to really pop out. But you might want some more shadow on that side. So if you're closer to the window, then you don't have to be this close. You could be a little bit farther away. Okay. Now, when you use a V-flat too, you can also buy these in black. So if you were to get blackboard, and let's say you have some lighting coming on this side, that maybe it's a direct sunlight coming in. Let's say there's a window right there and there's some direct sunlight and you just want to block it, then you could actually put a blackboard right there too, and then put the reflector on this side. There's so many ways you can do it, but this is ultimately the cheapest studio right here, okay? Super easy. And this was Staples for $3 or something like that. Okay, so the next thing I want to show you, and then I'm going to show you examples of what I did. I did photograph this yesterday, so I will show you all of those. Now, there is actually one more thing I want to say about a smartphone. Now, this is something that the iPhone does, but I'm pretty sure that many of your other cell phone apps will have similar features. So you really want to learn your apps. And you can buy so many different app add-ons for your camera. There's just so many things that you can do that I can't tell you specifically which ones to buy because it all depends on the situation. But with an iPhone, what you want to do is when you actually take the picture, you also want to tap on it. Now, obviously, if I were photographing this, let's imagine that I was actually photographing it, so it would be this way, but we don't want to look at my hand or my chin right now. So we're going to go back that way. So imagine that I'm photographing it this way. And I want to literally make sure that this part of the jewelry, this right here, is in focus and the right exposure, okay? So on a cell phone, you just have to tap the screen. Tapping the screen sets the focus right where you tap, as well as sets the exposure right where you tap. And I'm kind of sure that that's pretty consistent with some other different apps. There might be other options, but since our phones are all touch screen, so using touch is going to be a great way to control the situation and the lighting when you want to actually get more details. So tap on it. So when you're actually taking a picture of something that's an object, even a person, or more of a story, you might be pulling back, and I'm going to show you an example of a story. Then you're going to touch that screen where you want the focus to be. It will also set the exposure. Okay. Now I'm going to try another subject here. We have a wine bottle and a glass of wine. Okay. I know I just put my smartphone on a black surface. Okay. Oh, wait a minute. I'm looking at me. Okay, so now you see in my smartphone, this is really talented. Like I'm looking at me, I'm looking at this cell phone, and because I can't see the back end. Okay, so as you can see, I'm photographing this bottle of wine and this glass against a very busy background. And I'm going to talk a little bit about backgrounds later when I go into composition. But for the most part, it's super busy. So let's say I take a picture here, but the lighting is really good because I have this lighting right here and I have that lighting right there. So the lighting is pretty good. And if I want to add that fill light and add it to the side, I can get a little bit more light on that side. But the background is so busy, okay? So let's say I decide and photograph it this way. Don't I love a swivel. Okay, so now I'm photographing it this way. So now I've got the kitchen behind me, but it's still a little busy, but it's a little better. But what's wrong here? Well, now I'm backlit. Okay, so now I'm gonna actually be in the shadow. And so I'm gonna need some light to actually fill it in. Okay, so I can add that reflector again, but maybe the fill in, because my light source is coming from up there and to the side, my fill in is gonna have to be right here. It's gonna be in my way a little bit. Okay, so this is where we're gonna get into some extra stuff. And I'm going to turn on this light. Look at that. Actually, I'm going to use the different one. I have two lights over here. I'll turn this one on. Okay, so now I have a spotlight. Okay, and this is just a continuous light. I have a little bit of a reflector on it. Okay, so it's pretty harsh. It seems pretty harsh with this cell phone right now because I'm using the webcam obviously on my cell phone. But if I tap it where I want it to show, so right now it says Filipino Ranch. I don't think you can tell because it's too light with this cell phone, with the smartphone webcam. But anyway, so it says Filipino Ranch. So if I want to make sure that's Filipino Ranch is in focus, I would tap the screen where Filipino Ranch says, and then I would take it and it would be much better. Now here's where, if you look at your features for your front end or for your back end camera, because I would normally be taking it like this, right? If you look at the features, there's one that might be for micro photography or portrait photography. And we're going to talk a lot more about that one in part 2, but portrait photography is a great tool. If you have that feature on your phone, use it. Because now if I were to take a picture of it with portrait photography, what happens is it zooms in a little bit and it blurs out the background. And in photography, it's called a bokeh or a bokeh. I know some people don't know how to pronounce it. I'm not even sure I know how to pronounce it, but I believe it's called a bokeh or a bokeh. And what that does is it blurs out the background. And so you're left with a blurry background, and then you can see very clearly what your subject is. And that's going to look a lot better. It's going to make the background disappear a little bit, and it's going to put lots of primary focus on your actual subject right there. Okay, so let's say now I take it in portrait mode. I tap it, I focus on it, and I have a little bit of light coming in, and it looks so much better. It just looks a little bit better. And I will show you an example in just a moment, because it's going to be hard for me to go back and forth, you know. Okay, so now we're going to try another subject. I'm going to put cell phone over there, and we're going to do flowers. Now, if we were to do flowers, now I'm on this side. Okay, without the light, it's going to be dark and backlit. Whoops, sorry. Up and down, up and down. So you can see it's going to be dark and backlit. And an easy way to tell too is that you have, let's see if I can show you. This is the shadow. The shadow is coming towards you. So that's how also you know that it's backlit. So we'll pop in that light again. And we'll take a picture in portrait mode of your subject right there. Okay, click. Okay, took the picture. But let's say it's a little bit harsh. I don't want it to be quite that harsh. What happens is too, and I'll show this in the final picture, is when you turn on a separate light source, you can see obviously where the light source is coming from. You can see all of these highlights. I'm gonna just try and zoom in with the cell phone on the side, because you can see where the reflection of the window right here. So if I'm using another light source, you can always tell what kind of light source it is. And if it's an artificial light or not, an artificial light, as opposed to the actual sun, by what's reflected in the subject, if it's a reflective surface. Okay, so I also have this light source right here, which is called, which is actually the same light. It's the same exact light. I have two of these, this continuous light, but this one has a softbox on it. This is an octagonal soft box, and it's 2 layers. So I'm going to show you here. So it's 2 layers. So when you see the inside right here, you'll see that there's 1 layer of white, soft, white sheer vinyl, and then there's another one on top. And then there's a reflective, there's like this silvery around, this is like an umbrella, but there's silver around the edge, which also reflects more light. You might not be able to tell that because it's so bright. But what that does is it diffuses the light even more. And so when I'm actually taking the subject now, it softens the light. You can see the shadow on the bottom is going to be a little bit softer. Okay. Okay. So with that, we're going to come back and I'm going to show you those pictures that I took. Okay. Put this smartphone there. I'm going to turn this right here. Okay, somebody says, how do you see what's coming through your phone? Well, typically when you're photographing, because I'm using a webcam right now on the phone itself. See, and there's my computer webcam. Ooh, that's cool. There's me. Okay, so when you're actually taking a picture, you're gonna see the picture, what you're photographing on this side and this part of the screen, because you're photographing with. Oh, and there's one more tip too. When you're starting off, the first thing you're going to do before you take any picture, number 1 tip, absolutely number 1 tip, and the most important, I'm telling you right now, this is the most important, is to get yourself a lens cleaner that you use for your glasses, and you're going to clean that camera lens right there, okay? Because we talk on the phone, we put it down, we put it on things, and of course I took mine out of my case, because I wanted to be able to show it to you, and I was going to put it in a tripod, but I decided not to, because I wanted to show you this phone a little bit better. But the case sometimes makes it worse, because what happens is it gets gunky in there, and you know, things get dirt. Now you have oil, so you always want to clean that lens before you take any picture. I'm telling you, that's going to make a big deal, and that goes with the front end. If you're going to take a picture of yourself as a selfie, you want to clean that lens too. Okay, and you can see that this is the the front facing camera, because that's what's being cleaned right now. Okay, so there you go. That's the front facing camera. So I hope that answers your question. It's hard to tell because I'm using a Zoom thing right now. But anyway, I'm going to stop share. Oh no, I'm going to start sharing. And we're going to talk about those pictures. So let's look at that first picture of the jewelry. Okay. So the first one right here, I put the velvet down. I took a picture of the pendant, and I didn't tap the lens. I didn't tap anything onto the lens. I'm sorry. I didn't tap the screen. I didn't tap it because if I were taking that picture, oops, I think we went out of. Okay, well, anyway, so I didn't tap that picture. And so therefore what happened was it didn't actually set the exposure for what it is I was photographing, and it didn't focus right there. So so what the camera does is it takes an overall balance of what it is you're photographing and measures the amount of light being based on what everything is reflecting off the surface of whatever your subject is. And that could be something in your total environment. So if you were photographing somebody in an all white dress, such as a bride, and she was surrounded by maybe a big light source right here and a dark tunnel over here, like a dark hallway over here, and then bright red over here. It's going to take everything, it's going to balance everything out and then create the exposure. But you want her to be the one that's properly exposed, and she's wearing all white. So she's wearing the most reflective surface. So you have to make sure that you balance it by actually touching the screen or doing something that the app actually does. And I'm sure it's a touch screen thing that will balance the light. You're telling the camera on your phone that that's what you want the exposure to be. So I did that with the second one. I just tapped it, and this was the best one. I mean, it looked fabulous. It came out really, really well. The black went black, and then the highlights were balanced because everything was balanced right there. So it took an overall exposure based on this subject, and it focused it right here. Now the third one was with the reflector, and you can see very clearly. Barbara, can you see my mouse as I'm scrolling around, as I'm whirling it around?
Yes.
Okay, good. Okay, that was why I didn't want to also use a full screen on this. Okay, so now on this one, on the third one, I tapped it and I used the reflector, but obviously I don't have a scrim, and a V flat, and I'll show you what a V flat is in a moment. In a picture, but the V flat would stand up by itself. I was literally holding the V flat when I took it, as well as touching the screen and positioning, trying to get the same angle because I didn't want to have to crop anything. I literally just took these right off of my phone. I did no editing on these at all. I just took them in here. And so it's slightly out of focus. In my opinion, it's because I moved the camera a little bit. I like the light better on here actually, because it does reflect a little bit more light in here. You can see that shadow right there got filled in, but it's a little blurry and out of focus. And the reason why is because it is kind of dark in here. Even though I have a lot of natural light coming in, it's not super bright. It's not, so the camera is working hard to open up the lens as much as possible to give me enough light that I want. So I moved the camera just slightly, and that's what caused it to be slightly blurred. Even though I kept tapping and focusing on that one area, it just blurred a little bit. So that is tip number one for the dog photographer. Tip number one for the dog photographer is use really good light, because if your dog is moving around a lot and you're in a dark lighting situation, then forget it. He's gonna be a blurry doggy, okay? So if you're using better light, that's going to be tip number one, is to make sure it's good. And then when you get the dog's attention, he's not going to be as blurry, okay? Dogs are a different thing. That's really more about working with your subject matter as opposed to photographing the subject matter, because when you're photographing a dog, they don't have much of an attention span and they're not going to pose for you. So training the dog to pose for you would be like a really good tip. However, that might not always be easy depending on the type of dog. My suggestion, when I photograph a dog, I usually get him to sit. If it's a well-behaved dog, and you can get him to sit, and then you just make a noise. If I'm photographing a family with a dog and I've got my camera ready and I've got it on high speed because it's going to be it has to be a fast exposure, then I'm going to make a noise like yip, and then the dog is going to look at me, his ears are going to perk up, and you have 1 millisecond to take the right picture. Okay, it's all that timing, because you don't have a fast shutter. You have no control over shutter speeds over aperture settings or anything like that on a cell phone that you do on a pro camera. Okay, so that's where the difference is. That's why it's hard to photograph a lot of moving products or moving things. But you can also do high speed. There's some options on your app that will allow you to do, and that would be probably the best way to photograph moving things. Okay, but now we'll go back to this. So the next one was does anybody have any questions at this point? And I'd like, once I finish going through and critiquing these photos, maybe we could take a 5-minute break just so that people can go to the bathroom, because I realize this is 2 hours. We still have a lot more content to go through. So I'll go through these and then maybe we can take a quick break. Does that sound good, Barbara?
Yes, that sounds great. John asked about a running dog. John wants to take photos of his dogs.
A running dog. Well, you're really challenging. Well, I would love for you to see. I'd love to see what you get. Okay, look for one of your cell phone features as high speed, like, because there's one thing, like you can take. I don't know if you have an iPhone or an Android or whatever, but on an iPhone they have like they have the live photo, which really takes super multiple quick photos of people, and it'll showcase the best one out of the live. But if you actually preview it, you might see some movement, and but there's also high speed, and that's really what you want to do if you want to take pictures of your dog running. And in this case, you would have to photograph the dog out in very bright sunlight. So you're going to have lots of weird shadows. If you can photograph the dog running in diffuse sunlight, like on a foggy day, that would even be better. But that's just a different kind of project that we would need to really analyze. Okay, back to photographing wine bottles and wine glasses. Okay, so here was the first one that I took on the left. And as you can see, I have this, very busy bookcase right behind it. And I don't like the way it reflects into the wine glass. I mean, I don't love the kitchen version, but as you can see, I turned it around and I did the kitchen version and I used the portrait mode. And doesn't that look better? Tell me that looks better. Okay, well, I hope it looks better because now your subject is right in front. Okay, so you're telling your audience what to look at. Whereas here, everything kind of blends together. It gets really, really busy. Whereas here, because these two items are in focus, it's like you're telling your audience, look at these, don't look at the background. Okay, even though the background in this case is still kind of busy. So now this third one, here's another feature with the iPhone that I really like. And I'm sure that there's a feature on Androids and other kinds of phones that do the same thing, is when you tap on the phone and it sets the focus. So I tapped on the phone right here and it set the exposure for this right here. So it is really bright, which made this come a little brighter, but I also can scroll. When I tap the phone, I can go up on the phone and I can come down on the phone. And if I go up, it's going to brighten it. And if I go down, it's going to darken it. Okay, so that's a feature that I really like. And so what I did here is I tapped on the phone and then I scrolled up with my finger to brighten the whole thing up so that this wouldn't be so dark, because obviously this is backlit. Here's all the front shadow, okay, because all that light source is coming to the back and to the side right here. So it's even harder on the side right in this direction. So I brighten it up. But the only thing with that is it gets really fuzzy, because you're adding so much light that there's all this filtering of light that comes around the subject. So it just doesn't get as sharp as if you were to actually light the front, okay? So this one, obviously, I lit the front with my spotlight. And again, like I was telling you, whatever the source of light is that you're using, you can usually see it if you're using something very reflective. So there's the spotlight right there. And this is really, if you're looking at people, and I love this, I am a photographer, I geek out. When you're looking at a picture of somebody, a portrait of somebody, I look at the eyes because that's how I know what kind of light source they're using. So if they're using, whether it's a spotlight or whether it's one of these things right here, these octagon light boxes, you can see the shape of that in the eye itself. And that's how you know how the subject was lit. I love that. So I analyze that stuff all the time. Okay, so you see it's so much better. It fills in that shadow a bit. It makes this a little bit sharper and crisper. And it also kind of tones down that background a little bit and actually highlighted the glass as well. Okay, for the third one, which is the flowers, I did the same thing. So on the left side, I took the flowers, and obviously you can see it's backlit. Then I took the flowers again, I tapped it and scrolled up to brighten up the light. And you know, it's soft, it's fuzzy, it just doesn't look as sharp. And then all of these highlights, the lightest thing in the photograph really ends up getting washed out. It really sort of blows out all the detail in those little carnations or whatever those are, those little flowers. They just got totally washed out. Okay, so then I did one with the spotlight again. Okay, and then I did one with the softbox. Now the softbox, it's really, really hard to tell, and I'm sure because on Zoom, it's not going to be the best quality, but let me just do this real quick. I'm going to zoom, I can't zoom in, so I'm going to actually make the picture way bigger. Now, if you look at these flowers right here, you can see with the spotlight, and I'm always going to show you what kind of light it is because that's showing you the light. With the spotlight, it's a lot harsher, right? It's a lot harder light. And so what happens is that you have a little shadow right on the back side of every single flower petal, okay? Now, is that a good thing or a bad thing? I'm not going to tell you right now. I'm going to let you guys be the judge. With the softbox, because it is diffused, it's got 2 layers of diffusion over that light source, it softens that shadow. It makes it softer. Remember, here's the light box. So it softens that shadow and it just makes it sort of dissipate a little bit. It's not as harsh, okay? Now here's the thing. Which do you guys think is better? I don't know if you guys can really tell. It is a lot harder to see on Zoom because from a distance, because I actually like the softbox better when it's really close up and it's in detail. So if it were an actual print, a photographic print, I think I would like that better because it would be softer. But on this side, I actually like this one better if I were to put it on the internet because the harshness of defining those little flower petals makes it look sharper. So it actually makes it look a little bit crisper. So this is going to be a personal thing. Okay. Now, when I buy these lights, I bought this light separately. All right. I mean, I'm a photographer, so I have lots of different equipment. So bear with me. I know that none of you have everything, but so I bought this light and this one is the same light. So I have 2 of them that are the same. They came with a little reflector, but I bought this separately. Okay. So I brought and I have modifiers that are rectangular as well as octagonal. And so they interchange. So you have that choice. If you have the octagonal box, you can use the reflector, you can use the octagonal box. I can use this reflector or this octagonal box. Oh, I don't have my video on my Zoom. I don't know how I did that. Sorry, I might do this during I'll do that during the test. Okay, but you guys can still see me here. Oh, here it came back on. Okay, good. So, and then on the inside of the umbrella, I could take this off if I wanted to. I could take this whole thing off, and I know you can't really see it, so I'm actually going to turn the light off. It's going to make me darker, but you'll be able to see this a little bit better. So you can see on the inside, it's silver. Okay, there's another lining in here. I could take this off if I wanted to, as well as this, and just use the umbrella, which is going to expand the light bigger, but it's not going to be as diffused because you won't have this. It's going to be more of a direct light source. So this is a direct light source. If I wanted to diffuse this, there's so many ways to modify the light. It's going to be really relevant, or it's going to be very beneficial to you to, once you buy stuff like this, is to test it out. And then another thing that comes with this is this little grid. And I should just open it because it's going to be hard to tell what that is. Oh, you know what? I am going to stop sharing since I'm talking about this. So this little grid is kind of cool. And this might be really important if you have a lot going on in the background. So what you do is you take this grid and you put it over the octagonal box, and it directs the light very specifically towards your subject matter, and it doesn't spread out beyond this light. So this grid right here, this like kind of looks like a honeycomb grid. It won't allow the light to come off. So if you're photographing, let's say a person, like me, in front of a wall, and you just want this side directional light, but you want it diffused, but you don't want it to fall on the wall, you can really, really control the light by using one of these grids. And that all came as one kit, which is really kind of nice. Okay, I think that's a good time to sort of stop. And does anybody have any questions? And then we'll take a quick break and we'll come back.
So we had one vote for the Softbox version.
Okay,
in the
good.
Chat box.
That's
okay,
good.
So we will take a 5-minute break. So we will see you at 11:19.
All right. Whew. All right.
All right, everyone, welcome back. All right, Gina, take it away.
Okay, so I am going to share screen again. Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about some tools that you can invest in that would really help. Maybe not the dog guy, but also depends. It depends on how behaved his dog is feeling in the moment, unless he wants to run around. But
dog guy's name is John. Just so you know, I don't know
John,
his dog's name, but he's John.
John, yeah. I mean, you might be photographing other things too besides your dog. So it's always good to invest in some tools to help you take better pictures. A tripod is really handy, especially if you're doing a lot of still photography, such as photographing artwork. For sure, I would get a tripod, or even just product photography, because then you can set up your camera, and if you're doing multiple photographs of different kinds of jewelry, it's going to make it so much easier to just knock one in place, take the picture and take it out. Knock one in place, take the picture, take it out. And you don't have to move around. So even if I go back to this jewelry picture, if I had actually had it on a tripod, I probably would have had better focus because I wouldn't have had any movement. And it would have been positioned exactly the same for all three of these, but I was just hand holding them because I was just trying to do something really quick to show you guys an example. So a tripod is really handy tool. I would recommend and suggest getting a decent quality one. I know that tripods are expensive. Some of them are thousands and thousands of dollars. I'm not lying, but that's for high-end videographers and photographers. You don't need that, obviously. But I mean, I have a very portable tripod right here, which I love, and I use this for my cell phone all the time, but I also use it for my big camera because I have it set up right here. I was going to use my big camera, big camera. But this one is great because it's super portable, but it's also pretty good quality and it's sturdy. It was probably about $110 or something like that. It's a Manfrotto, and it has this right here on it. So it's basically this one, as I'm showing you. It's this tripod right here. So it holds a cell phone, but it also holds a professional camera. So for me, I needed a dual purpose one. But if you don't have a pro camera, if you don't have a 35mm camera, and you're just using a cell phone, you could get one maybe a little bit lighter. And this one is kind of cool because you can also use a 35mm, but you can also use it as a selfie stick, which I think is really nice. So it's lighter weight, obviously, than this one. This is not super heavy, but it's still very portable. But because I have tripods that are 50 pounds that I wouldn't be able to put into my suitcase, whereas this one I could put in my suitcase. But this one is nice. It's not super sturdy. So if you are using something like this, you might knock it. It might bump over. If somebody walks by as they're doing video or something like that, or like a dog, if a dog walks by and you're doing a video, it might move and sway a little bit. But for the most part, it's kind of a nice dual purpose. This one you can almost put in your purse. It's really great. And then these kinds right here. This is just the mount. If you already have a tripod, then you can just get the mount. Like if let's say you had a dad who was a photographer or dabbled and he has an old tripod, then you don't have to invest in a new tripod just for a cell phone. You can just get the mount and then use that because most of them have pretty much standard mounts. Okay, so just make sure. And then there's also the ones which I don't even have pictures of in here that will wrap around things, but those are not super sturdy, so it really depends on what you're photographing. But some of them can be really good and really handy depending on where you are. If you just want to like wrap it around a tree trunk or something like that, or a tree branch, and then boom, you have a video you can do or a picture you can take. So this is a great tool. I would suggest investing in it if you're doing a lot of still photography or artwork or whatever. Okay, I just noticed a lot of new questions. Oh no. Oh, I have a sprint. Oh, you have to sprint to the office. Well, thanks, Carol. It was nice to see you or hear you or just see your name. I'll talk to you later. Okay. Then there are also other tools that I was talking to you about already. And that is V-flats. So this is what a V-flat looks like. Now these are huge, obviously. You can make a V-flat as small as an 8x10 or an 8.5 by 11. Like if you have two 8.5 by 11 pieces of cardboard or even white mat board and just tape it on one side, you can create a V-flat. I actually have two of these. They are 5 by 7. That means they're 5 feet by 7 feet. So open full length, they're 10 feet. I didn't want to show you that because I have a very small place. It would take up a lot of room in here, but they're great because if you're doing a portrait of a person right by a window, you can set up this V-flat right by that window and you have a beautiful, light, soft white bouncing all over, and women love this light, people. And I'm going to talk about this more in part 2 because it fills in all of the cracks and just makes us smooth. It's great. Anyway, so there's that. So V-flats are great. You can make them any size, do black and white, and they're very great tools and they're super cheap. Well, maybe not a 5 by 7 one would be cheap. So a reflector is also a great tool. Let me show you mine. Okay. Let me turn my computer back over here. And I'm going to stop share for a second. Okay. Reflector. So this is an all-in-one reflector. And you know, if I had known I was going to be doing my computer, I would have put shoes on. Sorry, I just realized you can see my bare feet. I'm just going to laugh at myself because, you know, hey, at least I'm wearing pants. It's not like I'm doing a Zoom thing and forgot to left my jammy pants on. Okay, so this is called a 5-in-1. Okay, and I actually have another piece to it that's not here because I hardly ever use it with this. But a 5-in-1 means it's going to have an insert over it, and one's going to be black. One side's going to be white. Actually, this is not a 5-in-1. I think this one was only a 3-in-1. This was only a 3-in-1. So I had black, I have silver, and I have white. Okay, now this is reflective. So this acts right here very much like this cardboard. It's just a piece of white board, right? It might be a little bit different color, it might be different, more reflective, but this one I would add a soft bounced light. It's not translucent, okay? But this one, so this one was that, and then I had one that was a 5-in-1. There was a little different shape, and that's this one. Okay, and then on the outside, it zippered over, and I had a silver on one side, I had a gold on the other, and I had a black on the other side, and then I had this one in the middle, and this is transparent, right? You can actually shine light through it. So this is also a diffuser, and it's called a scrim. And if you look up like pro photo shoots and you see like the whole scene, you'll see some photographers photographing models outside with scrims that are like 10 feet by 12 feet. They're ginormous and they're on stands because it's all meant to diffuse the sun, which is the best light source. So this is also great if you don't want to invest in putting a curtain on your window. You could literally put this on the window. I use this when I'm anywhere I go. I take these tools wherever I go when I'm photographing natural light, because if I'm photographing somebody under a tree, which is beautiful shadow light, it's indirect sunlight, it's shaded, but let's say it's windy and you have little holes coming through the trees, and then you have like little speckles of white light and maybe a big splotch of white light. So what I'll do is I'll have this over them, and that'll diffuse all those white spots and just make it more even lighting, okay? So that's another great tool. And these are not expensive. I'm telling you, you could probably buy a 3-in-1 or a 5-in-1 for maybe 25, 30 bucks, and they last a while. This one is very well used and worn. The handle is kind of broken. It's a little different shape. I actually prefer the circular ones better because it has 2 handles. So I do have another one like this that's also a scrim. But anyway, so there's some tools that you like. And another thing that I didn't really show you is if you're doing something really close up and you want to make your background seamless, you just get a piece of paper. So I have a package of 10. I could literally put another piece of white down here or have this on a white surface. I could put this on a stand with a little clip to hold it up, or I could tape this to a wall, and then I could photograph my subject right here, right? And then you have a seamless backdrop that's nice and soft. If your subject is very small, let's say it's this orange, okay, then it's going to be totally seamless. You could photograph it right a little more in the front of it, in the middle, so the background is a little at a distance. And you're doing a close-up shot right there, photographing this direction. This would be a nice seamless background. You can get these in black. You could get them in other colors. But keep in mind, this is something I also didn't mention, is that as you notice, I have all this beautiful light in here, skylights, window lights. I have no other light source on except for that light box. And because of that, the light is bouncing. That's why I have one big light. When I say it's one big light box, all this light is bouncing all over the walls. My walls are a creamy color. It's what they're painted. So it does affect the color. Now, I'm not that particular about cream. Cream is okay because the light coming through is bluer, right? Because it's sunlight. So if it's sunlight and it's bluer light, then having a little warmth is not going to affect it too much. But let's say you're in a room and you have green walls. Keep that in mind. Because if you have beautiful light in a green walled room, it's going to affect the color of whatever it is you're photographing. So the same goes with a backdrop. If you're using a blue backdrop and you're photographing something that's white, then it's going to have maybe a bluer tint, or if it's green, a bluer tint, or if it's pink, it's going to be a redder tint or whatever. So just keep that in mind. It's not a bad thing, but you just have to be aware of it so that if you want to adjust it with, say, a photo filter, you can adjust it with a photo filter. Okay, moving on. So I am now going to share my screen again. This is the most active Zoom presentation I've ever done. Getting up and down. Okay. Does anybody have any questions so far?
No, we're doing good.
Okay, great. Okay, back to tools. So here's the scrim, like I showed you. It's just a white expandable, and I love these things. They expand, and it's just like one of those sun shields you used to buy for your windows. Well, I'm from Arizona, so like everybody that lives there has one of these sun shields. I should get another one actually, because I parked my car out under the sun, especially the next couple of days, because it's probably going to be excruciatingly hot. And I feel sorry for some of you who don't have air conditioner. I have my air conditioner on right now, which is lovely. Thank goodness, because I have all these hot lights. You might not want to do a photo shoot on a hot day if you're using these artificial lights, because these can get pretty warm. Actually, that's not so bad. Some of them have fans in them too. Okay, and then we'll talk about the continuous lighting. Now you can get all kinds of continuous lighting. So I didn't show you a picture of this one, and I'm going to show you a close-up of this. So again, I guess I'm going to stop share real quick. Okay, so this is a continuous light. It doesn't have a light bulb. The light source comes out right through there. When it comes out, it reflects on this little reflector and it kind of creates this little spotlight. This one, actually these two, I said they were the same. They're actually very much the same, but they're a slightly different model. This one has a digital panel. So you can go from different wattages. I believe this one goes up to 60 watts, and you can dial the wattage in from like probably 10 to 60. This one is a little bit higher. It goes up to 80, but this one has a digital reading. That one doesn't have a digital reading, but I like that one better because it's 80 watt and it's a little tiny bit more compact. So it's just a little different model than this one, but these are great. This one is the Newer brand. They're fairly lightweight. That one is lighter. And for that one being 80 watts, I like that one better because I can control more light if I need it on that one. But this one's still really great, and it has the same it's the same kind of light. Now, the other ones that I just had pictures of, which I will now share my screen again. So you can also get some that are umbrellas with just one light bulb. And then if you want to be experimental, you can, most of the time when you buy these, this is like a kit. So it's 3 stands, 3 light bulbs, and these are daylight balanced light bulb fluorescents, and then 2 umbrellas, and it comes in a little set. Okay, this is very nice because it's super portable. And this was probably a very cheap one. So, these are not the greatest quality, but they're totally functional. And if you have a small room, this might be better than doing something like this because these take up a lot more space. However, when you're dealing with one light bulb, you're dealing with the wattage that the light bulb is. Of course, let's say this one is, I don't even know, I didn't take the specs down when I grabbed this picture, but this could be like a 60 watt. So that's 60 plus 60 plus 60 combined if you use all 3 of them. You can actually photograph this in 2 ways. So in this case, the light is shining onto the inside of the umbrella and bouncing off back onto the subject. So I'm going to go grab the subject. So let's say, sorry, there's a little delay. Okay, so let's say your subject is right here. Of course, this is not the ideal setup, but your subject is being lit this way. Then you're going to have light fill in from all different directions. If you want to soften one side, you just pull the umbrella back. Whereas that's one of the things that I like about these is if you have them set up, you can dial, like say if I have both of these set up, then I can dial in one at 80 watts and dial one at 40 watts if I just want just a little bit of a fill light, not too much. I still want a little shadow there, but not as harsh, so you have more control over these. Whereas this one, you can still do that, but you have to literally physically move the light backwards or forwards to give it that dimension or to give it that intensity. But you can also turn the umbrella around. So now let's say you're photographing it this way. This acts as like more diffused light. This is still diffused because it's bouncing, it's bounced light, so it's still diffused, but this will act more like one of these light boxes. So you can actually turn the umbrellas around and actually photograph through them. Okay, the only disadvantage about these is you have to, if you travel with them, you have to travel with glass. I don't like to travel with light bulbs. I had one of these setups, right? Actually, I have both because I have lots of umbrellas. So this setup right here is it's not the same kind of continuous light that I just showed you. It's more like the light bulbs. It's a multiple, and I don't have any to show you anymore because I sold mine last year, but it holds 6 light bulbs. So some of them hold 4 light bulbs, some of them hold 2, some of them hold 6. It gives you a lot more wattage, which is great. So if you're doing video, then maybe video is something that you could use these for, but you have to have more space, obviously. You have to be able to have the room to set it up so that, because they take up a lot of room, but they do photograph really, really well, you know, so it gives you a little bit more wattage, but then to tear it down and to make it a portable system might not be feasible because you have tons of light bulbs. In this case, there's probably like 4 or 5 light bulbs in each one of these, okay? And then other lighting, there's so many different kinds of lighting out there, people. I know that it's kind of overwhelming to really understand what you need lights for, like what you're gonna be doing. Like if you are a Instagrammer and you do lots of, and you have a YouTube channel and you do videos, well, you're gonna want stills, you want video and stills. But if you are somebody that's photographing just product photography, you don't need these lights necessarily. You know, you just need the right lighting setup for your condition, but for your situation, but it also should be, you should be able to use the lights in multiple situations unless you're only using video. Like if you're only doing video, that's what I would suggest these kinds of lights for. This is basically video. It's a video panel. You can actually add colors. It syncs to your phone, so you can change the color tones, which is cool. So in this case, it doesn't matter where you shoot. You can actually adjust the color temperature by adding in those different lights. Which lights for oil paintings? I would use my lights. I would use these. These are probably the best because they are really controllable. And if you get a diffuser, that would be even better. So that's what I would suggest. I mean, you could do these lights too, but just know you need to have the space and you're not going to be taking them down and up. Like these are easier to take down. I just have to take it off of the tripod and that's it. And I put it away, you know, but these are going to be like, there's multiple light bulbs in there and it's going to be a little bit harder. So I would suggest getting my continuous lights. This is going to be more for video. This is called a ring light, which is
Gina?
super popular these days. Yes.
Gina, can I interrupt you for a sec? Could you
Yes.
give us a resource for getting those kinds of things?
Go to Amazon and look up continuous lights.
Thank you.
That would be, you'll see all of these. I pulled all of these from Amazon and I would give you links. I'm not making money from that anymore, but you know, if you go to Amazon and look up continuous lights, you'll find all of these different light sources. Keep in mind, the cheaper the quality, the cheaper the product, the cheaper the quality is going to be on the stands and the mounts. And those tend to be what break first. So if you want it to be a little long lasting, don't go super cheap. I mean, go with what you can budget, but if you really want something to last a little bit longer, kind of get a little better quality. It's gonna be beneficial. So these are about $100, $110 each. But you would have to buy the stands. And then if you get the light boxes, that's also a separate fee. No, so if you want to, I would suggest finding these continuous lights and you'll see it looks like this. And look for a kit. Maybe look for one that is a total kit that has the stands and the light modifiers, okay? And for paintings in general, I would use not octagonal, rectangle would be fine. You don't have to use octagonal. I use this one more for portraiture. And I use the, yeah, so anyway, that's what I would suggest. So if you're a videographer, if you do lots of videos, as well as taking pictures with your phone to do product photography, this is really good because it's meant to be used, these ring lights are meant to be used with the camera in the middle, okay? I don't have one of these. I've been wanting to get one, but I'm gonna want to find one that I can use with a cell phone as well as with my pro camera, so I'm probably gonna need to buy a bigger one. Just keep in mind that if you get this, the best way to utilize this ring light is to always have that camera in the phone. You can't use a ring light and then use that as a source of light for when you're doing a Zoom meeting and you want to be lit better for your Zoom meeting. Why? Because if this goes on the other side of your laptop or your computer, it's going to shade the light that's coming off of you anyway. So it's really not the right source. If you're looking for lights to do better video, typically what you do is you set it up like this. You set it up at a 45-degree angle, even distance, to light the subject as even as possible. And this is a very big tip for the person who wants to photograph her artwork. 45-degree angle, completely even light. Like, it needs to be exactly even. And it needs to be, and that means wherever you're photographing, if there's a light source in the room, such as a window, let's say there's a window over on this side, and you have your two lights on this side, just set up like this. Okay, so if you have two lights like this, but they're totally even, and you have a window on this side, then you're gonna have more light on this side. So you may have to back out that light a little bit. And if you have one of these, then you can just dial it back, which might be easier, okay? Or you put it on a wall where there's no contamination of any other light. And make sure you photograph those paintings on a white wall. That's gonna be a big difference. So there's that. Okay, back to a ring light. I know I'm kind of bouncing back. So a ring light is also great. If you can find one that really bends, you can also use this for product photography. It's just a little more cumbersome, in my opinion. But it does it lights the subject very evenly. And what it does is it illuminates your face. As you see me, it illuminates your face and then creates a light. So it's really, really great if you have a very soft background, or like a minimal background, even just a white wall, let's say. It would illuminate your face and then create a vignette. So it actually, because it's a circle, it lights that spot, and then so it's really kind of a nice thing. But if you have a lot going on in the background, you probably wouldn't notice it, but it would still make it darker on the edges, which draws your attention into the center, which is the subject, and it's you. Okay, so that's if you're doing video. Okay, back to this. All right, and then you can also get, for product photography, you can also get, you can get pre-made light boxes that have the silver reflector. You can put your camera in through the top if you're photographing down. You can get some that are not, so these have black on one side, so that means that it's blocking any contamination from any other light source in the room. However, some of them are all white, and they are like sheer. So you could actually add a light source through here and a light source through here. So go again on Amazon. This little kit right here comes with multiple different backdrops, and those are called seamless backdrops. So that might be a tool that you like as well. Again, in this case, you would be using a cell phone and not a 35 millimeter, but you would set it up on a tripod, or you could set up on a tripod or just photograph down through the hole if you're doing flat photography, okay? All right, let's see. Is there any other questions about equipment or anything about setting up a home studio? Because I want to dive in just about maybe 10 minutes on composition, and then we'll end our presentation for today. Is there anything else? Okay,
I'm not seeing any right now. So
good.
If people chime in, I'll let you know.
So one thing I didn't go into a lot of detail, and I will go into a lot more detail next presentation, part 2. I keep wanting to say next week, but it's in 2 weeks. Is when you're photographing any kind of subject, okay, especially with a cell phone, well, not especially with any camera in general, the angle of your camera is going to cause different perspectives. So like right now, if you look at let me stop share. So I know Barbara can't pin Gina's smartphone, but I want you to look at my smartphone, okay?
Gina, it is pinned actually.
Oh, okay. Oh, maybe it's because I'm holding it.
It says it's pinned on my screen.
Oh, okay. Well, if you've had it pinned the whole time, then that means all of the recording might be on the pinned.
We will find out.
It doesn't matter. We will find out. Okay. So if you're looking at my smartphone, so right now I have the phone pretty much perpendicular to my face as much as possible. If I tip the phone, and if you look at the other version of me on my webcam, you'll see me tipping the phone. If I tip the phone, then the closest thing to the lens, because the lens is right there, is what? Is my forehead, which ends up being the biggest thing in the picture, okay? Now, a lot of people like to photograph themselves this way, but I'm gonna give you much more in-depth stuff next time I do my presentation on taking your pictures of yourself. And then if you tip it underneath and not perpendicular, then the largest thing in the lens is gonna be now my chin, which I hate that chin. You know, it's not very flattering. This is gonna apply to just about anything you photograph. It's gonna be more obvious. The distortion is definitely more obvious when you're photographing your face, because you see things that are more unflattering, you know. But if you're photographing just an object, let's say you're photographing my lovely mouse right there. Well, right now my mouse, it's like, who cares if it's a little distorted? Like, nobody really cares about that. But it depends on your project or your product. So obviously with this picture right here, this camera, this lens is getting a little distortion because it's photographing down, okay? It shows you a thumbnail, but I'm kind of thinking that's not the real thumbnail. This is probably photoshopped a little bit. So keep that in mind when you're photographing something, because if you don't mind the distortion, if you're creating a scene, like let's say you want to, I was going to actually set this up, but I don't think we have time. If you want to tell a story on social media about how one of your routines, such as journaling in the morning with your cup of coffee, and your pen, and you have your journal, and you have a cup of coffee right there. Then if you photograph at this angle, not only are you going to see more background, you know, so if you photograph your desktop, such as this, you're going to see some background. But if you turn the perspective looking down and make it flat, then it's going to be less distorted. It's going to be even. Okay, and then you have a whole kind of a canvas of whatever you can put in the image to tell a story. Okay, so the reason why I'm telling you this is because when I talk about composition, it's going to make much more sense. So there are all different kinds of composition. I'm going to talk about 8 rules. And the first one is my favorite, and it's called the rule of thirds. Okay, and so the rule of thirds is when you actually divide the image plane up into 9 quadrants, okay? Let's see here. So you divide the frame into 9 equal, basically rectangles. And this is where you place the primary subject on one of those converging lines, okay? So in this case, you're gonna actually add the subject, and here it's the tree, okay? So at the tree, and the sun is behind the tree. So this is the most definitive focal point in the composition. So it's rule of thirds because it's going 1, 2, 3, and then here's your converging line right here. And same with, so here's this perspective I was talking to you about when you're actually looking down and completely perpendicular to the flat surface that you're photographing. In this case, you have a couple of objects on here, and then you have the coffee, which is the primary focal point. So there's your rule of thirds. But the thing about this is that rule of thirds really works great with marketing, because it gives you an opportunity to utilize space and negative space where you can actually put more content, like you can tell your story. So Corona did this right here, rule of thirds, but it also has some content under that blank space. So I do, this is one of my favorite ways to photograph people for branding, because then they can use this as a way to tell a more in-depth story, okay? With this one, this is Megan Barnhart. She's also one of our consultants. So she's looking at the laptop, but there's all this space right here that can also tell a story. Like, what is she thinking? Like, is she in reflection? Is she often think about her clients in a way that helps her determine the best way to serve them, that kind of thing. So you're telling a story here. Now, when you're photographing somebody, a person, wherever their eyes are looking is where your eye is going to flow. So another thing about anything compositionally is it gives your eye direction on what the subject is. And this is storytelling. And when we actually share our photography in social media, on our website, however we're sharing it, we're telling stories, okay? If it's your favorite meal or your favorite cup of coffee, the story is about your favorite meal and your favorite cup of coffee. It's about the coffee. But in this case, it's about this beautiful tree. It's not necessarily about the pond. It's about the beautiful tree. And in this case, my eyes flowing to Megan, back to the computer, back to Megan, into her eyes. And so it's kind of going into this flow, because the subject and the storytelling is, what is she thinking? Okay, so it's about her working. It's about her enjoying her morning, kind of her morning ritual. This is like pre-work, right? Maybe she's getting her email, maybe she's doing her social media. She's not delving right into work right here. So this is where you want to think about how you can expand your story by how you compose it. And in this one, it's the same model, obviously. But here she's in self-reflection and she's on the beach. And so the story becomes about what she's doing, her sense of rituals. And that's really what branding is about. I will go into a lot of more detail on this next presentation. All right. Phone composition. Obviously, you guys know this. And when you're taking a picture, you can take a picture in vertical orientation, which is also known as portrait, or you can take a picture in horizontal orientation or landscape, okay? I'm just going to tell this right now, if you do any kind of video for YouTube or even lives, try and just do horizontal. And landscape looks so much better. Now, if you know specifically you're going to be sharing a Facebook story or an Instagram story or a TikTok or something like that, then you can do a quick video in portrait landscape as well, or portrait orientation as well. But for the majority of video stuff, please go horizontal, because it will fill the screen better. And if anybody's looking at your YouTube or your video on a big screen, it's not going to be cropped in and shown really small. You're going to actually see the full thing. People think that doing video on portrait, I think sometimes shows more of the subject, but you know what? Nobody cares about the feet, the belly. They really care about this part. Like this is the part that's interesting right here. Okay, so with that said, if we go back to rule of thirds, most rule of thirds work the best on horizontal or landscape positions, okay? So if you're doing a vertical, but you can do it on vertical too, is the point I'm trying to make. This is actually a square, and so this person did rule of thirds on square. So if you do rule of thirds with a portrait, it's kind of harder because you're forced to make the primary subject smaller in one of those converging lines, okay? So a lot of these compositional tips are going to be in horizontal landscape orientation as opposed to portrait, but it depends. It really depends. For headshots, a headshot, you definitely want to do vertical portrait because you don't necessarily need to tell the whole story. But then again, I take headshots also in portrait orientation because I want to be able to show or give room for content. Okay, so I'm going to probably dive into this in a little bit more detail on the next one because I have lots more composition to go through, but we are out of time and I know you guys are probably hungry. So I'm going to go ahead and see if anybody has any questions up to this point. Like, are you totally lost Has it been beneficial? Have I given you good information? Was this what you were expecting? Give me some feedback here, because we have 5 more minutes, and that's where I would like to wrap this up. I'm going to stop share. Nothing so far. People, we still have 20 people on the call. Does anybody have a certain problem they would like John did about photographing his really hyper dog? I'm just kidding. Thank you. Excellent presentation. Thank you. Anybody else have any other problems that's been kind of persistent? If you ever take a picture and it's super fuzzy, and this also goes to anybody who does a lot of Zoom videos, and they turn on their laptop and it's super fuzzy, again, this is your magic right here. Okay, always clean your lens before you take a picture, which also relates to your webcam on your laptop or your computer. So if I want to make sure I'm clear, I'm going to clean my lens on my computer, and poof, I'm much cleaner. It makes a huge difference. Love the input on the rule of thirds. Okay, good. I'm going to go in a little more detail the next time too, because it's going to be more about photographing people. But if you think about it, if you're doing a presentation where you're actually doing a flat surface, then you can use that rule of thirds in there too to bring your eye in and then add more text. So think about that too. That's a part of pre-planning a little bit as well. Do you recommend a selfie stick? I don't have a specific brand because I don't have a selfie stick. I just really use my tripod. I have had, believe it or not, I had a dollar store selfie stick, which was hysterical, and it was more of a joke than anything, but it actually worked okay. But I would suggest getting a selfie stick tripod combo. If you can find that on Amazon, that might be a little, that gives you more usage. On a portrait shot, do you focus on the person's eyes? Yes, absolutely. We will go into that more detail in part 2. But yeah, the focus, because basically the eyes are what people are going to look at when they see the portrait the most, or the direction of the eyes. So if the person's not looking in the lens in the camera and they're looking over there, then what they're looking at over here is going to be what you want to, the story you want to tell.
Gina, I'm going to interrupt you there. I just wanted to say thank you. As always, a fabulous presentation. I can't wait to see what you talk about in 2 weeks. For those of you who have not signed up for part 2, you can do that on our website at mcscorp.org. We also have a webinar coming up on Ascent, which is the SBA's new program for entrepreneurs. You can learn lots of information there. And of course, it's available 24/7 because it is on the internet. And then we have on the 23rd, we have Design Your Elevator Pitch. That's a great one if you're a business owner, because you have 15 to 30 seconds to capture someone's attention about who you are and what you're up to. So that's a great one. Then we have a WOSB certification, that's Women-Owned Small Business. That's being presented on the 24th. And then Make the Sale, How to Build Your Customer Base Without Losing Friends. That one is on the 24th. That one's being put on by Nis, also a fabulous presenter. And if you missed some of this webinar, or if there's others you want to learn about, you can always find them. If you just Google MCSC Women's Business Center YouTube, you will see all of them, and you can watch any of them whenever you like. We record almost everything we do. So thank you all so much for coming today. We look forward to seeing you again in a couple weeks. And again, thank you so much, Gina. Have a good day, everyone. Bye.
Unmuted. Oh, darn. Did you stop? Are people still here? Okay, there's 13 people still here. If you're interested in working with me through MCSC, I can also help you with a specific project, because I know everybody's doing a different thing. And so if you have, like somebody just mentioned about photographing buildings and stuff like that, that would be another topic to discuss. So make a consult with me. I also help with marketing and as well as branding. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.